Hello, I'm Dr. Prabhavati Shukla, Professor, School of Studies in Psychology, Pandit Ravi Shankar Shukla University, Raipur. Today my lecture is on problem solving. We see that in our day-to-day life, we come across many simple and complex problems, which is related to our family, our occupation, our social, our economic, and we try to solve it through different ways according to types of problems. Now, it is a procedure of making adjustment in spite of interference. Scientific and systematic steps in problem solving behavior are problem awareness, problem understanding, collection of relevant information, formulation of possible solution, and verification of concluded solution. But for all this problem solving process, thinking is required. Now, how will you define thinking? Thinking is a covered set of mental skills that makes use of our knowledge. Thinking is a goal-oriented and rational, which requires a clearly well-defined goal. One must find a path that leads to the goal with the aim of doing so as directly as possible. Directed thinking avoids wandering aimlessly, exploring odd options and looking for creative solution. Wandering thought is undirect thinking. Such thought meanders without concern of any goal or purpose. It takes us to destinations that are sometimes insightful. It seems to play a special role in creativity and the solution of problems that are poorly defined. Freud distinguished between dreaming and daydreaming as a form of undirected thought. Dream in this view reflects primary process thinking, in which our deepest wishes are fulfilled without the bothersome constraint of reality. Daydreaming is contrast reflected secondary process thinking. It conforms to the reality principle that meditates the battle of the ego with the unconscious, and both direct and indirect thinking have a role in problem solving specific type of problem. Directed thinking begins with the assumption that the problem at hand is well defined, which has its initial state, goal state and sub-goal state, which is specifically defined by an operator. Ill-defined problems are those in which the goal state, the initial state, the operator are not clearly defined. Thinking involves the selection of the appropriate habit family hierarchy and the specific sequence or chain within the hierarchy. The anticipatory goal response is the key to learning new ways to use existing knowledge and to develop new information in solving problem. It indicates the association between the problem and new response that mark novel and possible better routes to the solution of the goal. Now, what are the theories of thought process? There is association theory is there, Gestalt theory is there, and information processing theory is there. Now, in association theory, it is a stimulus response model. This model relies on a feedback mechanism that provides for anticipation of the goal stimulus, which in turn directs the immediate response towards the goal. This anticipatory response becomes chained up into habit family hierarchy. In addition, the anticipatory response are generalized in other response pattern. Reinforcement of the response pattern is in the form of mental fixedness called problem solving set. The second is the Gestalt theory. It explains two kinds of thinking. One is the thinking reproductive, which is the rote one, and productive, it is the imaginative and insightful. Gestalt depend on the goal to motivate and direct the problem solving process. Problem solving process is largely dependent on the subject's flexibility and skills in perception. It is a solution does not emerge from the first of the situation. The perception would be revised by regrouping and reorganizing parts and relations, and by taking creative, unstereotyped views of object functions related to problem. The third is the information processing. This system compares human thinking to computer data processing. It takes into account of input and processing capacity. Thinking is a cognitive activity directed to achieve something end. It is described as problem solving behavior and symbol activity, that is sign, symbol, mental image, and can be shifted very rapidly. Now there are different types of thinking process. The first one is the perceptual thinking. The basis of perceptual thinking is perception, that is interpretation of consciousness. According to experience, it is carried over by the perception of actual or concrete object or events. Conceptual thinking, it is an abstract thinking where one makes use of concept, generalizes the ideas and language. It is regarded as a superior type of perceptual thinking, as it economizes efforts in understanding and problem solving. The third is the reflective thinking. It is achiever form of thinking and it aims at solving complex problems rather than simple problem. It requires reorganization of all relevant experience and findings, new way to reacting to any mechanical trial and error type of effort. There is an insightful cognitive approach in reflective thinking. All relevant facts are arranged in a logical order in order to get the solution of a problem in hand. And next is the creative thinking. It aims at creating something new, novel. The thinking of scientists and innovators are examples of creative thinking. Next is the associative thinking, and it is a direct thinking which pertains to certain type of reasoning and problem solving procedure aimed at meeting specific goals. Sometimes we find ourselves engaged in a unique type of thinking which is self-directed and without goal. Example, daydreaming, fantasy and delusion categories all fall under this type of thinking. Current findings offer novel ideas. Current findings offer novel evidences that co-thought pointing gestures are spontaneously solicited when participants are confronted with problem solving tasks. Gesture seems to be productive for problem solving performance when tasks are more complex and interactive with visual working memory capacity. Moreover, instructing others to do so may add problem solving performance. Beside gesture support, cognitive functions may go beyond speech process and provide the initial insight in improving the educational environment by soliciting embodied problem solving. Now, what are the barriers in problem solving? Barriers in problem solving are mental construct that hinders our daily barriers in problem solving are mental construct that hinders our ability to correctly solve the problem. These barriers hinders and prevent problem solving in most effective manner. Some of the barriers are practical barriers, social barrier, cognitive barrier and physical barrier. But we will concentrate on the cognitive blocks. The cognitive blocks that causes problem solving difficulty is, one is the confirmation bias. It is an unintentional bias which is caused by the collection and use of data in a way that favors a perceived notion. The second is the mental set, and is a tendency in which people have to only use solutions that have worked in the past rather than looking for the alternative ideas. Third is the functional fixedness. It refers to the tendency to see object as having only a single typical use Objects are categorized on the basis of functional features. Some misleading informations also works as barriers in problem solving. Information that is presented at a part of a problem but which is unrelated or unimportant to that problem and will not help to solve it. These type of information distracts from the problem solving process and works as a barrier in finding the most efficient solution. And next is the negative mood state leads to negative thoughts which avoids problem solving. Paradiagram blindness has also been considered as one barrier, and it is found in people who are unwilling to adopt or change their world outlook on a particular problem, ways of processing information. This can erode the effectiveness of problem solving behavior. They are not aware of the narrowness of thinking and therefore cannot think or act outside of their comfort zone. Now, what causes this barrier? First, it is our perception can cause potential source to be missed or ignored or unworkable based on our beliefs, attitudes and opinion. The second is our emotions. Emotional blocks are the things that we feel may stop to solve problem accurately. Third is the intellectual aspect, not having training, skill or knowledge to solve a problem. Self-expression has also been found as one of the causes for this cognitive barrier. And self-expression, how we express ourselves, poor expression of problems and solution. Self-expression, how we express ourselves, poor expression of problems and solution leads to misinterpretation and wrong communication. And lastly, it is our culture. It works on three levels. One is the behavior in relation to the workplace culture and ethics. Second is our own culture bias. And third is how culture expects behave in our environment, that is the social and the physical. Problem solving constitute a moderator skill for coordinating many cognitive, metacognitive and behavioral competence needed in both everyday and complex problem solving cases. Such competence are working memory, fluid intelligence, mathematical thinking, reading, comprehension, creativity, metacognition, awareness, internal control time, management. Education is interrelated to problem solving as it assists students' problem solving development. Moreover, individual self-perception that the problem solving skill constitute a major part on the current research methodology applied in problem solving assessment. Problem solving skills are connected to individuals' positive self-efficacy perception and by that to the better personal development and socialization. As a result, individual has a good chance of having social harmony and success in their life. Many studies have illustrated that emotional intelligence, self-confidence and social compatibility were positively correlated with students' problem solving skill. According to the researchers, problem solving is a 5-step process. First is encompassing, understanding oneself, defining the problem, making list of suitable solution and applying the most suitable solution. Preschool teachers' problem solving approach and their beliefs, perception of creativity level and thinking style was found that creativity level perception as the most important predictor of teachers' perceived problem solving skills. In a longitudinal study on students, confined that working memory and fluid reasoning are precursors of complex problem solving skill. As students transit from childhood to adolescence, he emphasized that cognitive experimental problem solving research has shed light on the cognitive abilities and components of problem solving process in order to improve the characteristics of problem solving tasks. Mirchi introduced a metacognitive based learning method in an attempt to see the mathematical problem solving ability. This method was aimed at raising students' self-awareness, how to design, monitor and evaluate their problem solving strategy, and found that students' mathematical problem solving ability was significantly related to the development of their metacognition behavior. Metacognitive strategy helps in boosting problem solving skill as well as overall attitudes towards learning. Results have also indicated that students' need for the concurrent development of their problem solving, reading comprehension as well as thinking skill. Siemens have adopted Jigsaw technique, that is cooperative learning method, to examine the academic achievement and problem solving skill, and found that academic achievement and problem solving skills had grown after implementation the Jigsaw technique. Strategies for complex problem solving. Some of the strategies for complex problem solving are: one is the reasoning strategy. Problem solving skill have been among the most extensively studied transversal skills. They have been investigated in the most prominent comprehensive international large scale assessment today. The common aspect in the different theoretical model are that a problem is characterized by a gap between the current state and the goal state with no immediate solution available. Recent researches on problem solving disregard content knowledge and dominant specific process. The reason for this is that understanding the structure of unfamiliar problem is more effective when it relies on abstract representation schema and metacognition strategies than on specifically relevant problem. Focus is more on assessing dominant general problem solving strategy such as complex problem solving, which can be used to solve novel problems, even those arising in interactive situations. A life history approach by Jennifer indicated that how harsh environment and hawk temperamental traits. A life history approach by Jennifer indicated that how harsh environment and hawk temperament traits differently shapes children's problem solving skill. It has further indicated that early environmental experience in combination with temperamental characteristics shapes children's cognitive functioning toward what is most salient in their environment. Evolutionary approach to child development offers important insight into the functional significance behind developmental adaptation in cognition. The second is the VOTA strategy. VOTA strategy, that is very one thing at a time, has been produced to be the most effective strategy for identifying causal relationship between input and output variable in a minimum complex system. Participants who employed this strategy tend to acquire more structural knowledge than those who used other strategies. With the VOTA strategy, the problem solving systematically varies only one input variable while other remained unchanged. This way, the effect of the variable that has changed can be observed directly by monitoring the change in the output variable. There are several types of VOTA strategy. One of them is exploration strategy, in which awareness of input behavior used in time is empirically tested. Systematicity of the trait is analyzed and difference in problem solving effectiveness of problem solving behavior is analyzed. The second is the heuristic strategy. The third is the heuristic strategy. A heuristic is a mental rule of thumb strategy that may or may not work in certain situations. Using this problem solving strategy allows people to simplify complex problem and reduce the total number of possible solutions to a more manageable set. Here the individual does not go for all the alternatives to solve problem, but chooses some most relevant alternatives. It is a shortcut and step saving thinking. Strategy principles which generates a solution quickly and is used frequently in everyday life and can be very effective. Next is the algorithm, and it is a procedure of steps that does guarantee a solution if one allows the step correctly. It is not always the best approach to problem solving. It is a subject to chance and is a set of steps that will lead to an automated solution to a problem which is predictable and deterministic. Algorithms can be long or short. Example, mathematical equation and computer program. It ensures correct solution to a problem and are closely related to logical thinking. And next is the rational versus organic approach to problem solving. In rational, persons prefer using a comprehensive and logic approach. The advantage of this strategy is that it gives a strong sense of order in a chaotic situation and provides a common frame of reference for which people can communicate in the situation. An organic quality of an organization comes from how one begins on the road itself rather than arriving at the destination. The quality comes from the ongoing process of trying rather than from having fixed a lot of problems. One quote is often used when explaining the organic approach to problem solving. All the greatest and most important problems in life are fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. This outgoing pros and further investigation to require a new level of consciousness. Some higher interest appeared on the horizon, and through this bombardment of outlook, the insoluble lost its urgency. It was not solved logically in its own term, but faded when confronted with new and stronger life urge. Strategies for problem solving changes according to the situation, and on the basis of the people develop strategies to solve problem. A series of experiments were conducted using matchsticks. In the first experiment, participants were presented with an array of joined squares, and the task was to remove a certain number of pieces from that array while maintaining a specific number of intact squares. The second was to see how problem solving develops over time while verbalizing their problem solving thought process. And in the third, the participant had completely a set of matchstick problems that could be solved using similar text, and then solved several problems that require the use of novel text. The findings conducted on the 3 studies was that when people tackle a problem, their initial moves may be constrained by perceptual components of the problem. But as they try out different texts, they hone in and settle on the one that are most efficient. However, this deduced knowledge can make difficult to switch to new texts when required. It also helps to explore understanding of the role of reasoning and deduction in problem solving, and of the process involved in the shift to more effective problem solving strategy. Now, what are the problem solving techniques? How will you solve the problem? One is generate and test technique. The process of thinking of possible solution, generating and then seeing it, thus possibility meets all the criteria. It is a technique that loses its effectiveness very rapidly when there are many possibilities to keep track of. The next is the mean end analysis. It is an action that reduces the gap between the current state and the goal state. It involves figuring out the desired end and then figuring out what means required to reach those ends. It is a strategy, problem solving technique, breaking down problems, creating new sub-problems and then solving new sub-problems. Third is the backward search. Sometimes it is useful to start at the goal state of a problem and attempt to work backward to the initial state. It helps us to see correct path by stating at end. The reason working backwards sometimes helps in sub-goal that one begins to see by starting with the final goal. Once the problem solver can invert a string of sub-goals projecting backward from the goal state, then going about solving in a forward direction can be readily accomplished. Next is the planning strategy. Two types of problem solving are there, simple problem and complex problem. In this we should first try to solve simple and then proceed to the complex problem. One common kind of problem solving strategy is analog. In analog, a solution to an earlier problem is used in order to help him in original problem. The usefulness of this technique depends on the extent to which the solution to the simple problem will be helped when the complex problem is considered. And thinking aloud is another technique of problem solving. In this technique, for studying human problem solving is referred to as concurrent verbalization. Concurrent verbalization relies on the short-term memory. When subject think aloud, they put into words a process that normally takes place non-verbally. This provides a description of that subject solution process. A verbal description so obtained is called protocol. Model of how working memory capacity influences insight problem solving in situation with multiple visual representation. Model of how working memory capacity influences insight problem solving in situation with multiple visual representation is considered as an eye tracking analysis. In this, the problem solver reconstructs a problem and suddenly comes up with a solution after systematic search for solution failure. Working memory is considered as cognitive process through which the learner acquires and processes new information to solve encountered problem. It is also considered as prerequisite for cognitive flexibility and which information is transferred to the long-term memory. Working may span in related to the ability to solve difficult problem, which benefits creative insight because it enables the individual to maintain focus and attention on the task and prevents undesirable mind wandering. Some researchers have examined the process by which working memory influences insight problem solving using eye movement. Several studies have shown that reading, calculation and fluid intelligence are associated with word problem solving. Successful insight problem solving are more likely to switch strategies when they analyze that current strategy is not working. Research shows that growth in the component of problem solving was significantly related to the growth in the working memory. Growth in the system of working memory is an important predictor of growth in children's problem solving beyond the contribution of cognitive restructuring. Achievement measurement related to problem solving ability helps people to increase attention and working memory. Problem solving is a cognitive task and it relies on the flexible and adaptive use of memory. Problem solving tasks that involves open-ended or poorly defined problems involves the retrieval of episodic memory from memory, while also requiring a future direct orientation at the same time. Successful problem solving often requires making reference to past experience and integrating the episodic detail of those experiences for development of novel alternative solution to a current problem. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you for watching this video. Thank you once more.